So, do buggy slash incomplete games deserve a second chance? Now, this is actually one area where I'm very thankful for my backlog because, due to the way that I organize it, I actually don't get to play games that much on release. I can't tell you the last time I actually played a game on launch day, and I don't pre-order games anymore at all. I just pick them up typically when they're on sale or when they're at a lower price, because there's no point in me purchasing a game that just came out today if I won't get to play it for almost a year later, depending on how vast my backlog is and how long it takes me to get through those games. So, I typically just wait, and then I'll buy them in bulk on sales, like, that they have on Amazon on certain days, or Black Friday sales, holiday sales, different things like that. So, I actually get the games, but I get them for a significantly lower price. And this has helped me out, financially, of course, because I'm not investing in so many games. At the beginning of this generation, I was buying everything on release, and sometimes even then I would buy like 2-3 games, and then I would sort of balance my time between the two. And just life has a way of reminding you that you're not in control of anything whatsoever. And at any single time you do try to control it, something pops up and it sets you back. And that's sort of what happened to me. I had some life events that basically caused my backlog to get to the point to where it was at. And because of how much I am passionate about games, I don't simply use games as an excuse to make me forget about my problems. I need to be mentally okay, because I'm sitting down to experience a story, and I want to make sure that I enjoy it, that I have nothing distracting me in my head. That's the value of what what those experiences hold. And so often I find that games being released today, are coming out, and they're either, they have all these bugs and issues, or they're missing features and things like that. And by the time I get to them, sometimes I can have a very different experience than a lot of other people. I think one of the more pressing matters quite recently is Control. When that game came out, it was pitiful on consoles. We're talking like if you had the base Xbox One or the base PS4, the frame rate would drop as low as like single digits, right? And it would hang there. It wouldn't just sit there and like kind of just dip and go back up like a stutter. It would hang there, and it completely impacted the experience for those people. And even if you had the enhanced machines, they still dropped frames on occasion, and it just made a very jerky experience. Now, given a couple weeks, Remedy has patched in, the performance patch, they call it, and it's fixed a majority of the frame rate issues, but it still does drop quite heavily in those areas. And so, further waiting is sort of what you kind of need to do. And I feel bad for those people who, it's like you get to experience everything so suddenly, because you're not really, in a way, you're sort of getting a half-assed version of the game. And I want to know personally, for those of you who have played games on release and do continue to play games on release day, do you, let's say the game is like there's a major bug in there that's sort of impacting your experience, or it's performance issues, something just isn't right. Do you guys put the game away and come back to it months later, or do you just say fuck it and then move on and play something else? And game development is very hard. It is very difficult. I think we have to keep in mind. And unfortunately, because of the way the industry is built around the whole monetization factor, it is a business after all, right? But I feel like these publishers at times are being forced to launch games that they don't really feel comfortable launching, and it's just like, get out the door. We need to make money. You can patch it later. It's fine. And again, this is why I'm so thankful that I don't sit here and have to worry about playing things on release, right? I could if I wanted to, right? At the end of the day, it's a choice. It's a choice if I want to play all these games on my backlog. It's a choice if I want to collect games. It's a choice if I want to play games on release or not. Ultimately, it is my choice. However, whatever personal subconscious of mine that has control over my emotions and actions, I want to make sure that I play through these games first, right? And sometimes that will mean waiting months and months and months later for a game. And I've had many experiences where I've actually waited and it's actually benefited me in the long run. For example, like Red Dead Redemption 2, when that game launched, it had really shitty HDR support that actually made the game look what a lot of people said was worse than the SDR standard image. And because I waited and waited, and I got to play that game, I just played it recently, so it must have been around 7-8 months, after the game was launched. It gave Rockstar all this time to actually fine-tune the HDR, to patch in updates, to repatch in issues where certain updates took away graphical features. And when I got to play the game, like the full game, right, in full HDR and everything with the new features, it was like, wow, this is an incredible experience. But people didn't have that luxury who played it on release. They had to sit there and wait basically until the game got better, So I actually have a couple games with me right now as I'm recording this audio, but times like these I actually wish I did record a vlog so I can actually show you the games here, but I'm sitting right now in my underwear recording this, so have fun picturing that. But these games I'm about to name off here either have had really buggy history or features that were missing and had to be patched in later. And I wonder that any of you who actually played these games, maybe on launch during the time when they were, having severe issues, whether or not you actually decided to stick with them, or if you actually gave up on them and then never went back. How many of you actually did go back if you did give up on them and really experience the games again after they're patched and hopefully fixed, although I don't know. So one of the first games I have here is Turning Point Fall of Liberty. Some of you guys may remember this game was infamous as being not just really buggy, but also apparently really crappy as well. And I have yet to play this game, but I do have it in my collection because I remember at the time when this game came out, I was like, I really loved the concept. It was really intriguing how all of a sudden the United States gets invaded, and I thought that was just super cool. But I never got to play the game on launch. That was one of those games I actually missed. But I'm actually curious to see if any of you actually played the game, back when it was having all these issues and bugs. And I have no idea if the developers have fixed them or not. I would think so, but given the game's reputation, this may not be a really good experience anyway. So, but how many of you guys maybe played that and given up on it? How about Duke Nukem Forever? I think everyone knows about this game. Really, this was one I actually did play around release, and I think I did a review on this game, although I may be wrong actually. But I do remember actually playing this game originally, and this is a franchise that I really wish would return, although given the political climate these days, I don't think we would ever get a Duke Nukem game, at least for a very long time. And even if they were to do it today, they would have to completely change up the entire game, and I already talked about this in my PS3 collection video, where I did a video explaining when that game came up how I think they could actually make a sequel in this day and age work. So if you're interested in hearing my projected thoughts on the story for a Duke Nukem game, you can go ahead and watch that video. But again, this is another game that was extremely buggy on launch. And actually, speaking of, Gearbox just released Borderlands 3, and that game is also kind of under heat right now for being rather buggy and incomplete feeling. A lot of people are saying that the game just feels unfinished. It feels like you're playing a beta version of Final Code. And, that kind of sucks, because I know a lot of people were really looking forward to Borderlands 3, and that's one that, unfortunately, Gearbox to me, is not a quality developer. I never considered them a quality developer. They made one game, Borderlands, that happened to be super successful, but their other games and their track records were, rather lackluster and or buggy. Even though I enjoyed games like Duke Nukem and at times even Aliens Colonial Marines, the quality of those games was not up to par. So when people, give so much love to Gearbox, and I like Randy Pitchford as a personality, I like him, right? But when it comes to the games that Gearbox makes, I'm always like, I'm going to wait to hear on this, because you just never know with them. But, again, Duke Nukem was another huge game that launched with so many bugs, and this was a game that I did finish and that I did enjoy in parts. But yeah, I wonder how many of you actually quit on the game entirely, and if you ever went back to it, let me know. How about Haze, back on the early PS3 days? Now, this is actually a guilty pleasure of mine. I think Haze is probably one of the more brilliant concepts for a first-person shooter that we've had in quite some time. It just wasn't executed properly by Ubisoft, which I should really do a video on some guilty pleasures of mine. I would kind of be surprised. I think you guys would be surprised to hear what I actually think about some of these games that were notoriously rated terribly. But this is another game that I actually, I adore in parts, but again, really bad bugs. We're talking like game-breaking bugs where entire floors were missing and sound would completely cut off. The game would just crash over and over and over again. I wonder how many of you guys who played Haze back in the day actually went back and tried it again, after all the patches. Let me know. All right, let's get into some more recent games. How about The Evil Within 2? Now, this is a game that I thought was fantastic, right? But this is an example of a feature that is missing. Not necessarily game-breaking at all, but another example of a feature that was, kind of not in the game, and that was enhancement coverage for the newer PS4 Pro and Xbox One X. When The Evil Within 2 launched, it didn't even have any support for PlayStation 4 Pro or Xbox One X, and it was only until it was patched in much later that the game actually had support for those enhanced consoles. And when I played the game, I bought it on PS4 because the base PS4 ran at a higher resolution than the Xbox One, and had somewhat more stable performance. But I was hoping that they would eventually patch the game up, and they did. And then I played it, and it performed great, right? But that's just more of a small sort of case where, I wouldn't necessarily call that game breaking, but again, it's like features that you have to wait for, and if you have an enhanced console, pretty much these days, you would think that almost all games support the PS4 Pro and Xbox One X, but apparently not, as The Evil Within 2, when it launched, did not have those support. And even Prey, from what I remember, if you have Prey, it doesn't even have support for PS4 Pro and Xbox One X to this day, even though it says it's on the freaking box art. So I don't know if they actually did eventually patch it up, but I haven't heard anything from like Digital Foundry or anyone around that. How about No Man's Sky? This is a game I did actually go and try out, but it wasn't until I think almost after a year once the game launched, because again, false promises and features that were shown that were not in the game whatsoever. This was one, and to be honest, this is sort of one that I sort of just bought because of how hyped everyone was. I wasn't even sure if I was gonna like the game or not. It turned out that the game experience was kind of shallow for me. It's one that I gave up on, and I don't know if I'll go back and play it. They just released one of their biggest updates again, which supposedly drastically changes the game. So I might go back and play it at one point, but it's not even a priority or thought on my mind at the moment. But again, that's a game that everybody, was burned for when they played that on release. Like, people were just, that was a huge controversy, and people were angry. And then the last game I have here is Assassin's Creed Unity, and I think we remember when this game launched, terrible performance, right? And I actually waited, I think it was about 2 or 3 months after the game released, for Ubisoft to actually make patches into the game, and then the game actually got into a playable state where, yes, there was still frame rate drops, but instead of getting into the teens, it was just being between 25 and 30 frames per second, which to me was passable, and I was able to get through the game. And I actually, Assassin's Creed Unity, I actually liked when it worked. It was actually a pretty good game, and the graphics still to these days are just fantastic. It's still one of the best looking games this generation, 5 years later or however long it's been. So pretty nuts. But I have all these games, and there's plenty more, that these are just the ones that I grabbed right now, but I have these games that notoriously were terribly buggy, and due to me waiting, I did not have the same experience as a lot of other people, and I wonder how many of you, who do play games on release, have you ever went back to play some of these buggy games, and if it wasn't any of the ones I listed here, which one was it that was so buggy for you that you actually stopped playing, but you did go back to? And if you didn't go back to it, why do you feel that, it's not worth it? I see the argument that there's so many games being released, so who has time to play really shitty ones, and why should you give a game a second chance if they couldn't get it right the first time because of how many games are coming out? It's like, why would you sit there and keep the game in your inventory, But I'm someone who I like to really really salvage my time with the experience, and I don't want to sit there and just kind of throw them away. I'm more than happy to go back and try something out if it's buggy and if I like the concept enough. It has to be interesting, of course, for me to actually make that effort to go back and play them. But sometimes those experiences are few and far in between, especially these days because I wait so long to play games. So now by the time I get to them, it's like, all right, they're all patched up. They're in a state that the developer is very happy with, and I can go and experience them as they were intended originally before they were just rushed out the door. So let me know what you guys think. Overall, I appreciate you all watching, and have a fantastic, fantastic end of your week.